This has been our most requested conspiracy yet. In fact, the show is so jam-packed with conspiracies, I had to bring in Chad from Lewtoons for some backup. This is one of the most popular cartoons on TV right now, and the internet has taken quite a liking to it. It's Gravity Falls. I am a huge fan of the show. I even got the chance to attend a panel as a part of LA Film Fest to hear creator Alex Hirsch and voices of Dipper and Mabel, Jason Ritter, and Christian Shaw talk about the show. So I'm not about to pick favorites here, but this is a conspiracy I've wanted to do for a very, very long time. If you've never heard of Gravity Falls, here's the lowdown. Twins Dipper and Mabel are forced to spend the summer in Gravity Falls, Oregon, working at their Grunkle Stan's tourist trap, the Mystery Shack. At first, Gravity Falls just seems like a quirky little town in the middle of nowhere, but there's definitely more than meets the eye. Not only is it filled with creepy creatures, strange magic, and some bizarre townfolk, signs in the show allude that there's something even bigger happening in Gravity Falls. Many of the mysteries in this town lie within hidden symbols throughout the show. Symbols that in most cases refer to real-life conspiracies.
Oh, hi, and thanks for having me, Emily. It's great to be here. Now, what do all of these hidden symbols actually mean?
Now before we begin, heed this warning. If you haven't seen Gravity Falls, there will be some light spoilers in this video. If you would like to remain completely unspoiled, I recommend turning off this video now, watching all of season 1, and then coming back. Go on, I'll give you a second. Are they still here? Okay, here we go. From Mayan calendars to cryptic writing, spooky souvenirs, and possibly satanic goats, Gravity Falls is filled with real-world secret symbols and signs. The biggest by far, however, is the all-seeing eye, or the Eye of Providence. And Chad here is going to tell us more about it.
It flashes at the end of the theme song, and it's hidden all around the Mystery Shack. The stained glass window, rugs, and it even replaces the A in shack here. And most importantly, and spoiler alert, this season's main villain was Bill Cipher, and he pretty much looks exactly like the Eye of Providence. So what could it actually mean?
In US history, the Eye of Providence is most notably associated with the Freemasons, an infamously secret society. It appears on the dollar bill with the motto, Coptis,
Annuit coeptis. Sounds like a Harry Potter spell.
Whatever. This translates to he approves our undertakings. He being God in this case. You know who else sees everything? Most recently, the Eye has been associated with something else, the Illuminati. Another secret society loosely tied to the Masons that has been accused of everything from striking deals with aliens to establishing New World Order.
In Gravity Falls, the Mystery Shack seems to house more of these signs than any place else. In the Gravity Falls online game Rumble's Revenge, there's a secret hidden message which reveals that there is in fact a secret society in the town. Some things about Grunkle Stan seem to hint that he is or maybe was a member of said secret society, or maybe even the leader of it. Could the Mystery Shack have been their meeting place, or even presently is their meeting place? And just what is Stan hiding?
Let's take a look at the screen that flashes at the end of the theme song. When decoded, this jumble of letters translates to Stan is not what he seems. That's awfully cryptic. Stan is definitely the show's most mysterious character. He's essentially never seen without his red fez featuring a gold symbol. Do you know who else wore red fezzes? The Shriners, also known as the Ancient Arabic Order of the Mystic Shrine. The Shriners are a fraternity that branch off the Freemasons and are also somehow loosely related to the Illuminati. And the symbol on the Shriner's fez looks eerily similar to that of Grunkle Stan's. When Stan is playing the eccentric Mystery Shack tour guide, he covers one eye, but never the same eye. The unneeded eye covering is a sign coined by the Illuminati to pay tribute to their mascot, the Eye of Providence.
So let's see, secret society, Eye of Providence, fezzes, eye patches. There seems to be quite a few coincidences here. So is Gravity Falls actually subliminal messaging for these secret organizations? Could Grunkle Stan actually be a member of the Shriners or the Illuminati? Or is creator Alex Hirsch just messing with us?
I'm gonna say it's the last one. Alex Hirsch is probably just messing with us.
Yep, I'd have to agree.
I'd be hard-pressed to say he wasn't influenced, inspired, or even knowingly referencing these already established secret societies in Gravity Falls. Actually, at the panel I attended, Alex said the reason you see the Triangle Man symbol so many times throughout the show is to simply foreshadow Bill Cipher, showing that he truly is everywhere. So screenwriting technique or subliminal messaging? I'll let you make your own decision. Will they actually admit that the eluded secret society in Gravity Falls is the Illuminati? I'm leaning towards probably not. Even if they do, they will most likely have a different name for it with some slightly different ideas. Probably no New World Order, but hey, that's just my guess. After all, this is a Disney show. But with just one season done and season 2 airing August 1st, we will simply just have to wait and see.
Hey everyone, taking a quick break to let you know that Frederator's online store StashRiot is giving $1,000 away for buying your plushies and t-shirts and other stuff from your favorite cartoons. Contest rules apply and there's a link in the description. Also, all shipping in the United States is totally free, and if you're outside the United States, StashRiot is taking $5 off the shipping costs. So go ahead and check them out now while you can.
Disney's female leads might sometimes seem pretty visually similar, but what if there's more to that than just a design choice?
So is this just another instance of Disney's unoriginal character designs, or could it be something more? Do you think Jane could be Belle's great-great-granddaughter? I can understand where this theory came from because it's pretty hard to ignore the physical similarities between Jane and Belle. They both have brown hair that they tend to pull back, and they both seem to wear yellow dresses. They also both have eccentric fathers, a desire for adventure, a taste in slightly wild men, and then a determination for fixing those men. In Tarzan, we also get a cameo appearance from the dishware formerly known as Chip and Mrs. Potts. It's possible that all of this runs in the family. But what connects the daughter of a French inventor to the daughter of a British professor? Bet you didn't guess it's the Duke of Weaseltown from Frozen.
It's pronounced Wesselton. You know, he does look very similar to Jane's father, Professor Q. Porter, but how exactly are they related? Beauty and the Beast seems to be set between the mid to late 1700s based off the original story, and Frozen is set in the mid 1800s. We're assuming the Duke is German based on his pronunciation of certain words, but how is a German Duke related to the grandson of a French prince? Well, for answers, let's look at everyone's favorite topic, the French Revolution. Belle and the Beast could have fled to Germany, where they would have been financially well off enough to win favor with the German nobility. This history would actually explain why the Duke is scared of sorcery, because his grandfather was cursed. The legend of his grandfather's curse would have been passed down through his family, which also means there would have been a wonderful moment when the Duke would have sat down with his father and said, "Son, let me tell you the story about the time your grandfather was a bear pig man." So when the Duke lost trade with Arundel, he would have seen opportunity in the British Industrial Revolution. And as a resourceful businessman, he did well enough that his grandson became a professor, also weirdly subconsciously interested in the study of giant hairy monsters. For a family that had gone from rags to riches across all of Europe multiple times, you can understand why their descendants would be adventurous, adaptable, and able to understand people who don't really speak their language.
This theory sounds so cool, but unfortunately it seems to fall apart pretty quickly. It makes sense that Frozen takes place around the mid-1800s. If you look at Hans's uniform, they're based off of Napoleonic and early post-Napoleonic era, which is around 1830 to 1850. So then when does Beauty and the Beast take place? Disney was heavily influenced by the original French fairy tale, which was published between 1740 and 1760. So we can assume that the film takes place somewhere in the mid-1700s. But this is where the theory makes its downfall.
During the song Be Our Guest, the dishware, apparently thinking being living dishware isn't oppressive enough, form a construct of the Eiffel Tower. But the Eiffel Tower wasn't built until the late 1880s. So if it's set in the late 1880s, how would Belle's grandson be able to go back in time to visit Elsa and Anna in Arundel? This is excellent fan fiction, it's just too bad history got in the way. Once again, history, the worst. So on the plausibility meter, I have to give the Frozen plus Beauty and the Beast plus Tarzan world theory a 3 out of 5 anthropomorphic dishwares out of 5.
Today on Cartoon Conspiracy, we're gonna do something a little different. We're here on location in the happiest place on earth with fellow Disney connoisseur, SarahSnitch.
And today we're here to get to the bottom of some of the craziest facts and fiction about Disneyland.
Disneyland's address is 1313 Harbor Way. Sounds creepy, right? Well, M is actually the 13th letter in the alphabet, so MM actually stands for Mickey Mouse. Main Street, USA was designed to resemble the center of a turn-of-the-century American town.
based on Walt's hometown, Marceline, Missouri. Here on Main Street, you can buy anything from decorative caramel apples to Disneyland merchandise. But at one point, you could also buy lingerie and cigars. Where the Crystal Art Shop stands today was once home to the Wizard of Bras. And this Native American statue is the last remnant of the tobacco shop that was open until 1991.
Did you know that Walt built himself an apartment inside the park so that he could stay and enjoy it with his family? It's right above the fire station, and while it's no longer in use, a light is kept on to honor him. Sleeping Beauty Castle actually has a working drawbridge, but it's only been used twice. Once at the park's opening in 1955, and again at the reopening of Fantasyland in 1983. Until the Tower of Terror was built in 2004, the Matterhorn was the tallest peak in the city of Anaheim. But did you know that in this to-scale model of the famous Alp, there is an actual basketball court? Due to the building codes in Anaheim, in order for a structure to be that tall, it had to be labeled an athletic complex.
Have you ever wondered how cast members and face characters get around the park without being seen? Rumor is that there is a series of underground tunnels and rooms. And while this is not the case for Disneyland, it's actually true in Disney World.
So we can all agree that Disneyland is probably the most magical place on the planet. And part of that magical illusion comes from Disney's own colors of green paint. Go away green and no see 'em green. They paint things these colors when they want them to blend into the background.
One of the best kept secrets in Disneyland is Walt's very own secret lounge called Club 33. Walt created Club 33 as a VIP lounge for Disneyland's investors. Up until 2012, only a select number of people were allowed in the club, but when the list opened up again, new members could pay an initiation fee of $27 grand and get put on a waiting list of 14 years. But it might be worth it, because Club 33 is the only place inside of Disneyland that serves alcohol.
Around the holidays, the Haunted Mansion is taken over by characters from Nightmare Before Christmas, but the rest of the year it's haunted by silly spooks. Except, it might literally be haunted. Rumor has it that in the 70s, a family spread the ashes of their deceased son on the ride. I mean, if I had to spend the rest of eternity haunting somewhere, I'd like it to be Disneyland.
Disneyland is home to a lot of animals. Goats, horses, ducks, and even cats. Instead of hiring an exterminator to handle any rodent problems, Disneyland instead employs hundreds of feral cats to wander the parks after closing and do a little pest control.
As if they couldn't stick Mickey Mouse in enough places throughout the park, Imagineers have hidden hundreds of hidden Mickeys across the resort. Some are pretty obvious, while others are very sneaky.
Probably one of the biggest Disneyland conspiracies out there is the location of Walt Disney's supposedly cryogenically frozen head, foot, nose, body, whatever. Some say it's under the castle, others think it's buried under the hub, and some even think it's in the Matterhorn. What do we think?
I would like to give just a big pat on the back to the Disney fandom for creating a conspiracy for a movie that has just barely been released. This conspiracy was actually sent to me by a viewer named DJ, and it was way too crazy to pass up. So, how are Disney's Big Hero 6, Frozen, Tangled, The Little Mermaid, Aladdin, and Bolt all connected?
You may have noticed a wanted poster of Hans in the police station of San Francisco. That's where this conspiracy theory begins. It's been pretty obvious that since Disney switched over to CG animation that all of their female characters look exactly the same. And it's apparently a well-documented fact that all Disney female characters must reproduce asexually via mitosis. And supposedly it is absolutely canon that Rapunzel is a cousin of Anna and Elsa from Frozen. And from there, the conspiracy states that Big Hero 6's Honey Lemon is the asexually reproduced daughter of Rapunzel, Gogo Tamago is the daughter of Elsa, and Aunt Cass is the daughter of Anna because they all look so alike.
We can also assume that Frozen and The Little Mermaid take place in the same universe because the sunken ship at the beginning of The Little Mermaid is that of Anna and Elsa's parents. Also that The Little Mermaid and Aladdin take place in the same universe because of Sebastian's quick cameo. And here's where the actual conspiracy begins. After Hans is arrested in Arendelle, he's sent to prison in Agrabah where he finds the genie's lamp. He uses it to transport himself to the year 2032 and kidnaps the daughters of the three cousins. Hans then tries to ransom off the girls to Rapunzel's great-great-great-great-great-granddaughter Penny, who we can also assume exists in this universe because a photo of her dog Bolt can also be seen on the police officer's desk. When his ransom doesn't work, Hans goes into hiding as the kabuki mask villain Yokai and kills Tadashi, the great-great-great-grandson of Kristoff. So is this Disneyverse theory really true?
Where exactly is it well documented that all Disney princesses asexually reproduce? I mean, we all know how mermaids reproduce, and it's super gross, but Ariel was a human when she had Melody, and Melody would also have some of her father Eric's genetics. And that still doesn't explain Rapunzel, Anna, or Elsa.
I'll contradict myself a little bit and believe that Anna and Elsa really are the cousins of Rapunzel, and that Frozen and The Little Mermaid really do take place in the same universe. And alright, I'll even buy that Aladdin and The Little Mermaid take place in the same universe. And so maybe Hans's brothers banished him to a prison all the way in the fictional Middle East hundreds of years after the events of Aladdin, which is like, harsh.
I'll buy this conspiracy up until the point that Hans travels to the future to ransom off the daughters of the princesses, because I have a little bit of a problem with that part. How are we to know that Tadashi is related to Kristoff? I mean, I know they look a lot alike, but are we supposed to assume that all men also asexually reproduce? How does the world exist then?
Actually, let's go back to the asexual reproduction thing, because that's what's really bothering me about this theory. I'm definitely not a biology expert here, but last time I checked, I'm pretty sure these girls aren't fungi or giant bacteria, so I don't think they can actually reproduce asexually. Of course I don't think this conspiracy is canon at all. Like the Frozen Tangled theory, the Frozen Tarzan theory, and even the Frozen Beauty and the Beast theory, this one relies solely on Easter eggs and really creative fan fiction. I'm definitely not going to give it a 5, but I also don't want to give it a 0. So I'm going to give this conspiracy a gold "you tried" star.
So I was up late at night watching cartoons, eating a jar of peanut butter, which is a pretty typical Saturday night for me, and I had a terrifying thought. What if Tailspin, the cartoon about bears flying planes, is actually a terrifying sequel to The Jungle Book about animals taking over the world? Our first piece of evidence is the song from The Jungle Book called I Wanna Be Like You. If you haven't heard it in a while, you're like, oh yeah, it's about a bear dancing with monkeys in a grass skirt, it's super cute. No, in fact, it is about a monkey king declaring his intentions to become like mankind and take their power for a higher empire. Also, it's in the ruins of like an ancient civilization, which is also just creepy as hell. In the song, King Louie states that he wishes to walk like a human,
I wanna walk like you,
talk like a human,
talk like you.
And he also expresses a disappointment that he feels like he's stuck at the current ring of the animal food chain. He wants to have mankind's fire and their power to ascend to a new, higher level.
And be just like the other men. I'm tired of walking around.
So what if after the events of Jungle Book, King Louie actually succeeded and got some of mankind's power and then took over all of humanity? And then instead of just getting fire, they got planes and buildings and tacky Hawaiian shirts. After this mass genocide of the human race, they decided to build a town in a place called Crepe Suzette, which is a fun wordplay of a French word for a dessert called a crepe Suzette, which is wordplay that no kid will get or appreciate. There, Baloo opened up a plane delivery service called Hire for Hire, run by a female bear named Rebecca, who I think is supposed to be attractive, but it's hard to tell because she's a bear, and found a sidekick in the sky surfing bear named Kit, which I think is also physically impossible. Meanwhile, King Louie opens up a bar because why not, and Shere Khan, well, Shere Khan is a tough businessman running Khan Enterprises. Is it Shere Khan or Shere? I never.
Shere Khan.
Shere Khan, okay. The only one missing is Bagheera, which is a little weird because he's such a main character in the Jungle Book, but maybe he actually existed and just passed away in the Great War. Oh yeah, the Great War, that's a thing, that's canon. In the episode Bygones, Baloo references a thing called the Great War, which ended 20 years ago. While we don't know exactly what the Great War is, it definitely could be an animal uprising. In Tailspin, Baloo's name is actually Baloo von Bearwald the 13th, which translates to mean he is the 13th in a long line of bears from the Brown Forest. Or jungle, it's the same thing basically. Before I start poking holes in my own wonderful theory, let me tell you some fun facts about Tailspin. Do you know that 2 episodes of Tailspin are banned? Well, one permanently banned and one only temporarily banned. The first episode was called Lost Horizons and was supposedly stereotyping Asian culture. Tisk tisk. The second episode was called Flying Dupes and was temporarily banned for having references to terrorism. Fun animals committing acts of terrorism. Also, did you know that Tailspin was nominated for an Emmy in 1991? Or that Tailspin is spelled T-A-L-E, even though it should totally be T-A-I-L because it's about animals with tails, and T-A-I-L is the appropriate term for planes. It's very confusing. There are a few holes in my theory thanks to the behind-the-scenes history of the show. In an interview on animationresource.org, one of the show's creators, Jim Magon, admitted that the show was basically a last-minute idea. Magon was already working on a show about Baloo and other secondary Disney characters that got rejected. Desperate for an idea, he recalled a plot from an earlier episode of DuckTales he wrote that would give Lunchpad McQuack his own air delivery service. He just swapped out the ducks for bears, and there you go, Tailspin. Same thing. So Tailspin was definitely a last-minute idea, meaning that any characters and their placement in the show, it's really just kind of them filling in the blanks. Like, you got King Louie, sure, he can run the bar. Tigers are businessmen, sure, there you go. So since this is my own personal theory, it seems very unfair for me to rate it. Why don't you in the comments tell me how good this theory is? And it's pretty good, right? It's pretty solid. Bears are scary. Well,
enter at your peril past the vaulted doors where impossible things happen that the world's never seen before. Sound familiar? Dexter's laboratory was the go-to place if you needed the craziest inventions, from robo-suits to time machines. What if one of these inventions actually killed his entire family?
well, as we all know, Dee Dee is always messing up Dexter's inventions. This theory proposes that one time Dee Dee was messing around in the lab, pushed the wrong button, and blew up the house, killing his entire family. Dexter was the only one who survived, and in his grief, he created clones of his entire family. This could also explain why Dexter's parents are so oblivious to the idea of his laboratory behind his bookshelf. He recreated them without the ability to recognize or remember the laboratory.
Also, this could explain why in some episodes the family gets blown up or turned into monsters, and by the next episode, they're totally fine. Dexter made his new family impervious to damage to prevent the same thing from happening. We also see that in several episodes Dexter has the ability to clone things and has also mastered how to control the central nervous system. You know, like the time he put the mind of a dog into a T-Rex. So is Dexter actually just living with clones of his dead family? What is with all of these sad conspiracies? Why must some people suck the joy out of cartoons? Okay, so the theory implies that Dexter loved his family enough to clone them. But why is it in that one episode where he gets lost in the supermarket, he wants nothing to do with his family and instead gets mixed up with a kid named Dexter? Or what about that one episode where he asks his parents to help him fight a monster in Japan, and at the end of the episode he wipes their memory? Why would he have to wipe their memory if he created them? I mean, it's a pretty good conspiracy, but based on this information, I'm a little skeptical still. So we're gonna have to give the Dexter's Lab conspiracy 2 handsome Dexters out of 5. One of my favorite things as a kid was Winnie the Pooh. You know, the adventures of a little boy named Christopher Robin and his best friend / stuffed animal Pooh Bear. Do you know what I mean, Bryarly? Oh yeah! Winnie the Pooh, tubby little cubby all stuffed with mental disorders. Wait, did you say mental disorders? This theory proposes that Christopher Robin and his animal friends are all diagnosed with various mental disorders. Now for this conspiracy, I asked my good friend and fellow Pooh Bear aficionado, Bryarly, to help me out. Thank you, Emily. I'm very glad to be here for this rather unusual story. You see, on December 12th, 2000, the Canadian Medical Journal decided to do a little study on our friends in the 100-acre wood. Because why not? Their findings are pretty extreme. Let's start with our favorite honey-eating bear, Winnie the Pooh. According to this study, Winnie the Pooh has attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, impulsivity with obsessive fixations, and last but not least, obsessive compulsive disorder. Oh bother. Little Piglet suffers from generalized anxiety disorder because he's constantly anxious and flustered. Our sad buddy Eeyore suffers from depression. The wonderfully hyper Tigger suffers from hyperactivity impulsivity. Rabbit suffers from OCD since he's always trying to keep everything in order. Owl is dyslexic, which is pretty tame considering the rest. Sadly, Christopher Robin doesn't come out so clean either. But he seems like such a normal kid. He makes believe with his stuffed toys and goes on imaginary adventures with them. You know, kid things. Well, apparently that's wrong. According to the study, based on the complexity of his hallucinations and his delusions of his toys having sentient life, he has, you guessed it, schizophrenia. What is happening to my childhood? Emily, this is making me feel like I should go to therapy. My childhood is a lie. Apparently, the only healthy ones in the group are Kanga and Roo. I mean, sure, she's a little overprotective at times, but what parent wouldn't be scared for their child's life when they're growing up around a gang of troubled youths? I think heffalumps and woozles are the least of their problems. But I wonder, do we have to accept the truth of this? Do all of our favorite characters need to be in therapy?
The evidence for this conspiracy is pretty impressive, especially considering whoever wrote it decided that the Canadian Medical Association needed to get involved. But how well do the diagnoses really pan out?
In several Winnie the Pooh specials, Owl's gotten the gang in a lot of trouble by misreading various signs and notes. Like in Pooh's Grand Adventure, he mistakes the word school for skull. That's a pretty big difference. But Owl is one of the oldest characters in the show, so it's possible that he might just need glasses. On the other hand, Rabbit's neurotic obsession with keeping everything in order and completely losing it when Tigger messes it up are symptoms pretty closely associated to OCD.
Hey, in Rabbit's defense, Tigger is a pretty terrible house guest. But he does seem to be consumed by his need for order. What about our favorite bear? Pooh, supposedly, has some pretty serious conditions. ADHD, OCD, impulsivity with obsessive fixations. Anyone familiar with the show knows that Pooh's obsession with honey often drives him to the point of carelessness, risking himself and his friends to get it. He is often forgetful and doesn't always listen to what his friends say. I don't know the exact specifications for this disorder, but that doesn't sound healthy to me. Still, we have to remember that Pooh is a bear, and bears aren't exactly known for their impulse control. So, what about the rest of the gang?
Well, Piglet must have generalized anxiety disorder. He's constantly shaking and has an unrealistic fear of everything. Like when he compares falling out of bed to falling 10,000 feet into jagged rocks. I mean, some days I feel the same way, but I'm not that dramatic about it. You know what? A low dosage of Xanax might help the little guy out. Now, Tigger's constant bouncing and jumping around can obviously be seen as a symptom of ADHD. He has all of this pent-up energy and is unable to focus, so he's literally bouncing off the walls. On the other side of the spectrum, Eeyore's poor outlook on life can be due to his depression. I mean, the poor guy eats thistles for food and lives in a pile of sticks. I don't know, guys. There's an awful lot of evidence to this conspiracy.
Sadly, I have to agree. It's pretty rock solid. Yet I find comfort in the fact that the creator, Alan Alexander Mill, never actually said that his characters had any of these disorders. On the other hand, just because ADHD wasn't necessarily diagnosed in the 1800s doesn't mean it didn't exist. Still, without any confirmation from the creator, who can't really give confirmation at this point, we can't give it a perfect score. So while this should be a rock-solid theory, we're gonna have to give it 4.5 heffalumps out of 5.
Yeah, I'll take comfort in that half a point. Have you guys ever wondered why that Timmy Turner kid from the Fairly Odd Parents looks so much like Danny Phantom? No? Seriously? Come on, Brizzy, back me up here.
Gladly. Come on, guys. They both have similar hair, thick eyebrows, blue eyes, even their parents look and act similar. Plus, they both like to jump into different dimensions. So we're wondering, is it possible that Timmy Turner grew up to be Danny Phantom?
We all know Timmy Turner has fairy godparents that grant his every wish and take him to and from their home dimension, Fairy World. But sadly, Timmy knows that when he turns 13, he loses his fairy godparents and every single memory that they ever existed. Distraught by the thought of losing his two best friends, Timmy makes a reckless wish before his 13th birthday. He wishes that he, Cosmo, and Wanda know each other when he's older. You know, at the ripe old age of 14 years old. Unfortunately, that wish is against the rules for Timmy. So instead, he wishes to become someone else completely. Someone more interesting, wiser, and cooler. Speaking of someone cooler...
Ah, this is much better. Where was I? Oh, yes, so just before Timmy's 13th birthday, his fairy godparents turn him into Danny Fenton, a 14-year-old living in Amity Park with his ghost-chasing parents and sister Jazz. Due to Timmy wanting to be a totally different person, the world changed around him as well. Fairy World transforms into Ghost Zone, and while he still has his parents, they've transformed into bizarro versions of themselves.
Speaking of different versions, the whole point of Timmy's wish is to keep Cosmo and Wanda in his life. And it works! But the Fairy Council is aware that the rules have been bent, so they make Cosmo and Wanda forget Timmy as well. And as a result, he's not sure who they are now. Could Frostbite the lovable snowman be Cosmo? And where did Jazz come from? Could she be Wanda? Timmy can't be sure, but he does know they're still in his life. Also, check out this comparison of characters. Trixie becomes Paulina, AJ becomes Tucker, Tootie becomes Sam, and Chester becomes Dash. With so much chaos and coincidence, could there be any truth to this theory?
Okay, so this theory is super cool. If it's true, Timmy/Danny is living the coolest possible life ever. Fairy godparents in his childhood, and ghostly superhero in his teens. But let's look a little closer. First of all, both shows were created by the same guy, Butch Hartman, so that explains the similar character design. Secondly, and more damaging, in the Fairly Odd Parents episode Poltergeeks, Danny Phantom makes a cameo in the background. This could mean that Danny Phantom and Timmy Turner live in the same universe at the same time. If that's the case, how could they possibly be the same person?
That's true. If Danny really does exist, the Fairy Council wouldn't allow wishes that give his life to Timmy. But what if we view the Danny Phantom cameo as a foreshadowing of things to come? Then this conspiracy could work. For example, we've seen on several occasions that Timmy would do anything to keep Cosmo and Wanda, so a reckless witch like this doesn't seem that out of the ordinary. Also, the similar personalities of characters in both shows is pretty conspicuous. For example, in the Fairly Odd Parents episode Poltergeeks, Timmy's parents become Ghostbusters. Would it really be such a stretch for them to become real ghost hunters in Danny Phantom?
Interesting point, Emily. There are a lot of similarities. But if this is true, why would Timmy's wish also make everyone grow an extra finger? Part of me really wants to believe this theory, but it's a little hard to accept. This whole concept is full of loose coincidences. I'm gonna give this conspiracy a 1.5 floaty crowny things out of 5.
Well, I think this conspiracy is a lot of fun and still holds a lot of ground, so I'm gonna give it 4 box ghosts out of 5. Hey guys, filling in for me this week is my good friend Sapphire from Toon Buzz. She's going to be covering a super sarcastic conspiracy, so I hope you enjoy and I'll see you guys next week.
Oh great, another theory thought up by people who'd rather find meaning in fictional cartoons than meaning in their own lives. Daria Morgendorffer, my spirit animal, is the sarcastic and misanthropic teenager from the 90s MTV series Daria. She's too much of a brain to fit in with her vapid high school classmates, and she's nothing like her popular sister Quinn, overachieving mom Helen, and neurotic dad Jake. But what if that's because she really isn't a Morgendorffer? Throughout the series, Quinn consistently refers to Daria as her cousin or something. We assume that's because Quinn is too embarrassed to admit that that weird girl is actually her sister, but what if she isn't lying, and that Daria's real mom is Aunt Amy? The theory states that Aunt Amy got pregnant at a time when she couldn't raise a child, and since her older sister Helen was already married and a well-off suburbanite, she offered to adopt Daria and raise her as her own. Amy moved a few hours away, and they all agreed to keep this a secret from Daria. Amy first makes an appearance in the episode I Don't, and from the second she arrives, she starts throwing bitingly honest remarks at everybody in a very Daria-like fashion. In that same episode, Daria makes a joke that she's in the witness protection program and that the Morgendorffers were kind enough to take her in. So, is Daria really the cynical spawn of Aunt Amy? Despite having really similar personalities, I don't think there's enough evidence to prove that Aunt Amy is Daria's real mom. I mean, if Helen was kind enough to help Amy out when she needed her, you would think she wouldn't speak so poorly of her and call her a tightly wound pain in the ass. And in the episode Lucky Strike, there is a very heartfelt moment when Quinn unashamedly admits that Daria is in fact her real sister. I think Amy's purpose in the series is to prove that Daria is related to these people. It's not uncommon for kids to share more traits with family members outside of their immediate family. I mean, I'm nothing like my parents. Wait. Because of its lack of evidence, I give this sick sad theory 1 pizza slice. Hey guys, Sapphire here from Toon Buzz, and I've got Emily held hostage in the other room while I take over the show this week.
Somebody help me!
Spirited Away is Miyazaki's beautiful masterpiece about a young girl forced to work in a bathhouse. Wait, is Spirited Away about child prostitution? 10-year-old Chihiro must work in a bathhouse in order to save her parents, who have been turned into pigs. This is very similar to how a lot of young girls are sold into prostitution in order to pay off their parents' debts. Back in the day, bathhouses doubled as brothels. The women that worked there were called yuna, which is what Chihiro is referred to in the Japanese version of the film. And brothel madams were called yubaba, which is the name of the bathhouse owner. Yubaba forces Chihiro to sign a contract that changes her name to Sen, very similar to how a lot of women change their name when entering this industry. You know how like strippers change their names to something like Candy or Sapphire. And the creepy no-face spirit? He keeps offering Chihiro money because he wants to, you know, buy her. In the end, the spell is broken when Chihiro remembers her real name, symbolizing that her innocence and sense of identity has been restored. So, is this film really a commentary on Japanese child prostitution? Alright, before you go crying about how your childhood is ruined, think about those young girls who don't have a childhood. There are a lot of articles and blogs that claim that Miyazaki himself said that the bathhouse is indeed a brothel, but it is impossible to find where this quote came from, so if somebody can find it, please send it to me. He's also been quoted with saying that he made this film simply because there just aren't a lot of films out there that 10-year-old girls can relate to. He said that kids these days are insensitive to the efforts that parents make to keep them happy. So from that perspective, Chihiro's journey is really just about learning work ethic and appreciating her parents. The bathhouse could very well be a commentary on the corruption of Japanese youth. This place where you go to be cleaned and purified has now become a place of filth and greed. Chihiro was never tempted by No-Face's money. The only thing she cared about was saving her friend Haku and her parents. Her purity of heart is what saved her in the end. I think we can all agree that Spirited Away is about a young girl being forced to grow up. But how she does so is still up for debate, and I think this theory makes some pretty good points. So I'm giving it 3.5 giant babies.
Hello everyone, my name is SarahSnitch and I'm a Disney YouTuber. You might remember me from the Disneyland Myths and Legends episode of Cartoon Conspiracy. My whole life revolves around Disney cartoons, so I'm pretty excited to break down this theory with all of you. Beauty and the Beast is regarded as one of Disney's most romantic love stories. It's the tale of a quirky bookworm who falls in love with a beast despite his ferocious appearance. It's a classic don't judge a book by its cover story where an ugly duckling finds love with a beautiful woman after learning how to be a gentleman. But what if the Beast never actually changed, but Belle did? Does Belle from Beauty and the Beast have Stockholm Syndrome? The theory that Belle has Stockholm Syndrome has been around since Beauty and the Beast was released in 1991. Stockholm Syndrome is defined as a psychological phenomenon where hostages start to develop positive feelings for their captors. Sometimes they even start identifying and falling in love. Does this sound strikingly similar to the story of a young woman held captive by an enraged beast, but who ends up falling in love with said beast despite his abusive tendencies? The answer is yes. In the beginning of the film, Belle willingly becomes the Beast's prisoner in order to save her father's life. But the fact that it was her idea in the first place has no effect on how the Beast treats her. He's threatening, demanding, and has a temper that you don't want to mess with. Initially, the Beast keeps Belle in a dungeon, but later she's upgraded to a regular bedroom. But still, she's denied food unless she agrees to dine with the Beast. If she doesn't, she starves. No, literally, the Beast says he'll starve her.
Then go ahead and starve!
Finally, Belle decides to try to escape from the castle, and at the point that she does, we actually have no idea how long she's been held captive. While she is wearing the same dress she arrived in, and hasn't seemed to explore the castle that much so far, the weather outside is strikingly different than the day she first arrived at the Beast Castle. The day that Belle left town to try to save her father, it was very warm and sunny. Later, when Maurice goes to the bar to try to convince the townspeople to help him rescue Belle, we can see that it's beginning to snow. And finally, as Belle tries to run away from the castle, we can see that there's a full-blown snowstorm going on, like a middle of winter level snowstorm. So it's safe to assume that at this point, Belle's been held captive for months. This is important because after the Beast rescues Belle from the wolves in the forest, she willingly agrees to go back to the castle with him, the first inkling of Stockholm Syndrome. She's had plenty of time to develop the syndrome, having been held captive for months. Unfortunately, when they return to the castle, the Beast continues to mistreat Belle, screaming at her for running away and blaming her for his resulted injuries. And then comes the second hint of Stockholm Syndrome, Belle thanking the Beast for saving her life. A crucial aspect of Stockholm Syndrome is that captives often interpret a lack of abuse for kindness, even if that act is simply not killing them or letting them die. So in this part of the movie, Belle is essentially saying, "Thanks so much, Beast, for not letting me die alone in the woods."
You're welcome.
At this point, I think it's important to bring up the 1997 midquel, Beauty and the Beast, The Enchanted Christmas. This movie takes place sometime in between the wolf attack and Belle and Beast's romantic dancing dinner date. This movie further shows Belle's condition as she has continued to be treated poorly by the Beast, even though in the original movie, he is seen being somewhat nicer to her after the wolf attack. They put extra emphasis on Belle being a prisoner who has to tiptoe around the Beast to avoid his abusive temper. All in all, Belle follows the traditional path of a prisoner who develops Stockholm Syndrome. First, she gives into captivity for fear of pain or death. Then she gets to know her captor as a survival tactic so she can avoid setting him off. For example, she never goes back to the West Wing again after the Beast finds her in there, and she starts obliging his request to eat with him so that she doesn't starve. and to not make him mad. Next, she regards any lack of abuse from the beast as kindness. This is especially prominent when she finally makes it back to town and describes the beast to Gaston as kind and gentle, even though moments ago he tried to throw a boulder-sized snowball at her. That definitely would have broken her neck. And finally, she starts to think of her captor as a friend and her rescuer as an enemy. Gaston and the townspeople are rightfully fearful that something terrible will happen to Belle if she continues to stay with the beast, but Belle now sees them as a threat to her beloved beast and attempts to save him from Gaston. So, does Belle fall in love with an abusive man? Is this Stockholm Syndrome? We say yes, but what do you think? Is there another way to view the situation? Be sure to let us know in the comments below. Remember, it's just a theory, so we definitely want to hear your opinion on whether or not Belle has Stockholm Syndrome. On the surface, Disney's newest animated movie Zootopia seems like a lively children's story about anthropomorphized animals trying to make it in the big city. It follows the story of a bunny named Judy Hopps, whose dream since childhood has been to become a police officer, something no bunny has done before. She pursues her goal and becomes the first ever bunny cop in Zootopia, which is the New York City of the animal world, where all animals live together in peace and harmony. It's a place where any animal, big or small, can be anything. When Judy joins the ZPD, she becomes determined to solve the city's biggest mystery, a missing mammal case in which 14 predatory animals have inexplicably disappeared. Unfortunately, since she's so small, the rest of the squad doesn't see her fit to tackle such a big case, and instead assign her to parking duty, the bottom of the totem pole. It's clear to see that Judy is a character that breaks down internal and external boundaries, proving to the world that she's not just a dumb bunny who can't make a difference. But more than that, Zootopia presents, in a child-friendly manner, a look at our own world and the way in which different sorts of people interact with each other. In Zootopia, while predators and prey strive to live peacefully amongst each other, they have a long history of aggression that affects their daily lives. In our world, the same could be said about the relationships between people of different races. Is Zootopia really just all about racism? We say yes. Zootopia starts out with a young Judy Hopps putting on a performance that shows the history of animal kind. Judy explains that before thousands of years of evolution, the jungle was defined by fear, treachery, and bloodlust, where prey animals lived in a constant state of fear of predators who hunted them. But in present day and in Zootopia, predators no longer hunt prey. Animals of all kinds live together peacefully and have evolved out of the desire to eat each other. But in the city, there are still elements of biological stratification. All of the different types of animals live in separate boroughs or sections of the city, and there's also no hint at interspecies relationships. At the end of her performance, young Judy Hopps exclaims that she hopes to be the first ever bunny cop when she grows up. The audience laughs at her, and her parents have to calmly explain that there's never been a bunny cop before, and she probably shouldn't set her goals too high or she'll end up disappointed. Of course, she doesn't listen, and she does end up as the first ever bunny cop on the ZPD. While Judy believes herself to be free of prejudices, it's her and her family that first show us the biases that animals can have against each other. When Judy prepares to leave home for Zootopia, her parents warn her to beware of foxes, who they say can be very violent and sneaky. Judy points out that she also knows a lot of sneaky bunnies that are mean-spirited, and you can't judge a book by its cover, but she still decides to take fox repellent with her to Zootopia. The movie sets up very early on the stereotypes and predisposed ideas that prey animals have of predator animals. Judy's experiences with foxes in particular exemplifies how people can have a predisposed idea about a whole entire type of person based off experiences with one singular person. Judy's childhood experiences with a fox named Gideon Gray make her, without her even knowing, prejudiced against foxes later in life and initially hesitant to trust any foxes she meets. There are many direct parallels to real-life racism in this movie that are quite overt. For example, when Judy starts her job at the ZPD, she meets Officer Clawhauser. He's a cheetah who works the front desk of the department. Clawhauser calls Judy cute, which is actually an incendiary word in Zootopia similar to derogatory terms we hear in our world. Judy explains that when other species call bunnies cute, it's demeaning, and only other bunnies can call bunnies cute.
I am so sorry.
This was one of the more obvious parallels between racism in Zootopia and racism in our world. Soon, Judy meets Nick Wilde, a fox, of course. He is indeed sneaky, cunning, and sly, but Judy realizes pretty quickly that she's gonna need his help to solve the missing mammal case. Throughout the entire film, Nick and Judy poke fun at each other and highlight the stereotypes between predator and prey. Nick taunts Judy for being so small and tells her that she'll never be able to be a real cop, and so she should just give up.
There's a toy store missing its stuffed animal, so why don't you get back to
to your box.
Judy, through encouraging Nick to be a better person, points out that Nick has become what people expect of him, a devious fox. It isn't until much later in the film that we see why Nick really is the way he is. As a young boy, Nick wanted to be the Zootopia version of a Boy Scout, but the rest of the troop immediately distrusted him based solely on the fact that he's a fox. They cruelly place a muzzle on him and say they can't trust him if he's not wearing it, and they taunt him as he begins to cry. Nick tells Judy that this was the moment he gave in to the stereotypes about foxes because he saw that people were only ever gonna see him that way. This is another incredible allegory for today's racial struggles, where many people fulfill society's expectations of themselves because they feel like they'll be seen that way no matter what they do. Finally, Nick and Judy find the missing mammals, who are being held captive as they've inexplicably gone savage, reason still unknown. The ZPD begins to use Judy as their figurehead because she's a prey-type animal and comes off as less menacing to the masses. They ask Judy to speak at a press conference where she makes a statement about the animals that have gone missing. She states, "It might have something to do with biology, a biological component, you know? Something in their DNA." Judy's acknowledgement of a biological component is really important. In the real world, stereotypes sometimes overshadow physical evidence in criminal cases when minorities are believed to be inherently violent, angry, or dangerous. Nick becomes rightfully really mad at Judy for insinuating that there's something biological about predators that will make them more violent. Judy attempts to assure him that she doesn't think he is like that, which is something we've heard way too often when people try to defend their racist statements about a whole group of people. People oftentimes like to separate one singular person from the idea they have about a group of people. An added layer on top of the predator-prey allegory going on is Judy's position as a cop. Police officers are more frequently at the front of race relations in the US today. While Judy is at her core a just and fair police officer, she still finds herself in a position to defend a squad and a mayor of the city that she doesn't believe in. After her press conference, Zootopia experiences a decline in morale. Prey begin to feel extremely unsafe, not knowing which predators might just snap and attack them. One scene shows a rabbit on the train pull her baby bunny closer to her while they sit next to a tiger. In a later scene, the new mayor of Zootopia explains that fear always works as a tactic for manipulating the masses. Anti-predator sentiment has made Zootopia become distrustful. It's all kind of similar to racial profiling that happens in the US today. As one would guess, it's not actually in the predator's DNA to be angry and violent. All of the missing mammals had consumed a toxic flower that resulted in a really crazy violent reaction. Judy's parents explained that once a bunny ate the flower and went savage as well. It becomes Judy's job to bring this new information to light and end the stigma against predators, who have become social pariahs in the city after her press conference. This film encourages people to look beyond what they think they know about a person, despite what they've been conditioned to believe. It's pretty irrefutable that Zootopia was written to be a commentary on more recent racial tensions in the US. Predators being stigmatized and treated unfairly by the police force and the government sounds way too similar to what minorities experience in the US today. While recent events have made Zootopia especially poignant this year, it's definitely a movie that will continue to teach valuable lessons to future generations and remain relevant for years to come.